Throughout human history, we've looked to the seas with a mixture of wonder and fear. In those mysterious depths, few creatures have captured our imagination quite like the octopus. Ancient sailors, returning from tempestuous voyages, spoke of monstrous tentacles rising from fathomless waters, the legendary kraken capable of dragging entire ships to their doom. Meanwhile, across the Pacific, Polynesian folklore wove tales of the octopus as Kanaloa, god of the ocean depths, a being of immense wisdom and power. These weren't simply tales of terror, but acknowledgements of something our ancestors sensed instinctively. We were encountering a form of intelligence unlike our own, an intelligence that evolved in the alien world beneath the waves, following a path separate from our own for over 500 million years. Today, science has replaced mythology, but our fascination remains undiminished. The octopus has transformed in our understanding from bizarre invertebrate oddity to one of the most cognitively sophisticated creatures on our planet. With their problem-solving abilities, their remarkable escape artistry, and their eerily human-like curiosity, octopuses challenge our very definition of intelligence. I call them the Octopus Syndicate, not because they form criminal enterprises, but because there seems to be a collective intelligence at work across their species. A shared genius that manifests differently in each individual octopus, but that emerges from the same evolutionary brilliance. They operate in our world, but remain fundamentally separate from it, observers and participants in a reality we can barely comprehend. The questions that drive our investigation are deceptively simple, yet profoundly complex. Are octopuses truly the most intelligent invertebrates on Earth? The evidence certainly points in that direction, but how do we even measure such intelligence when it manifests so differently from our own? Consider what happens when we try to define intelligence across species. Our human-centered tests and expectations fall woefully short. An octopus doesn't need to recognize itself in a mirror to demonstrate self-awareness, not when its very skin functions as both sensor and display, a living interface with its environment that we're only beginning to understand. And what are we to make of the underwater cities recently discovered off the coast of Australia? Places like Octlantis and Octopuses, where these supposedly solitary creatures gather, interact, and even appear to cooperate. These settlements upend decades of scientific consensus about octopus behavior. Could they represent something more than mere aggregations, perhaps the beginnings of octopus culture? The implications stretch far beyond marine biology. If a creature with a lifespan measured in mere years, with no parental guidance or extended social structure, can develop such remarkable cognitive abilities, what does that tell us about the nature of intelligence itself? What might octopuses teach us about the potential for intelligence to evolve in environments utterly unlike our own, perhaps even beyond our planet? As we dive deeper into the world of the octopus, we're not just exploring an extraordinary animal, we're challenging our understanding of what it means to be intelligent, to be conscious, to be alive in a complex world. The octopus extends its arms across the boundaries of our understanding, inviting us into a fundamentally different way of being, eight-limbed, short-lived, and possibly, in its own unique way, brilliant beyond our comprehension. Imagine for a moment encountering a creature so unlike ourselves that it might as well have descended from another world. This is the octopus, an evolutionary experiment that took a radically different path from our own. 3 hearts pump blue blood through its body, not red like ours, but blue, copper-based instead of iron-based, an ancient chemical solution to the problem of oxygen transport. The first heart pushes this cerulean blood through the body, while the other 2 serve solely to pump blood through each of its gills. When an octopus swims, one of these hearts actually stops beating, perhaps explaining why these masters of dexterity prefer to crawl along the sea floor rather than swimming through open water. But it's not just their cardiovascular system that defies our vertebrate expectations. These animals have essentially turned the concept of a body inside out. With no bones to constrain them, an adult octopus can compress its entire body through an opening the size of a quarter. Their only hard part, a beak made of chitin, the same material as insect exoskeletons, sits at the center of their body like the only non-negotiable piece of their fluid anatomy. This radical flexibility comes with a price, however. The average octopus lives just 1 to 2 years, a heartbreakingly brief existence for such a complex mind. The giant Pacific octopus, the largest of the family, might reach 5 years in extraordinary circumstances. But most live fast and die young, their metabolism burning hot and fast like a candle with its wick lit at both ends. The octopus body is a marvel of natural engineering, but it's their skin that truly showcases nature's genius. Imagine being able to change not just your color but your texture within seconds to match your surroundings perfectly. Specialized cells called chromatophores expand and contract, revealing or concealing pigments to create rippling patterns of color across their skin. Deeper layers of reflective cells, called iridophores and leucophores, bounce light back in iridescent displays that no human technology can yet replicate. But their disguise goes beyond color. Tiny muscular structures called papillae rise from their skin to mimic the texture of coral, rocks or seaweed. An octopus resting on a bed of pebbles doesn't just match their color, it becomes the pebbles, each bump on its skin transforming to mirror the environment so perfectly that even the sharpest-eyed predator swims past, none the wiser. Perhaps most extraordinary is their capacity for regeneration. Lose an arm to a predator? No problem. The octopus regrows it, complete with all neural connections, as if it had never been lost. And not just the arm, the specialized suckers too, each one lined with chemoreceptors that allow the octopus to taste what it touches. Each arm quite literally has a mind of its own, capable of problem-solving even when severed from the body, a disquieting ability that speaks to their utterly alien neural architecture. If their bodies seem alien, their minds are even more so. The octopus represents intelligence redesigned from first principles, a parallel evolution of complex cognition that emerged along a completely different pathway from our own. Consider this. Roughly 2/3 of an octopus's neurons aren't located in its brain at all, but distributed throughout its body, primarily in its arms. Each arm contains about 40 million neurons, a number comparable to the brain of a small mammal, allowing it to act with startling independence. Cut off from the central brain, an octopus arm continues to reach, grasp and even solve simple puzzles. This isn't just reflexive movement, it's localized processing, decision-making happening at the periphery rather than the center. What would it feel like to have your consciousness distributed through your limbs, to have your fingers making decisions without consulting your brain? This is the reality of octopus existence, a fundamentally different way of processing the world than our centralized brain-dominant experience. Their central brain, contained in a donut-shaped structure that encircles their esophagus, contains roughly 500 million neurons. That's modest compared to our human brain's 86 billion. Yet octopuses display problem-solving abilities that rival those of some mammals. Their brain-to-body ratio exceeds that of most fish and reptiles, approaching the proportions found in birds and smaller mammals. The vertical lobe of the octopus brain, possibly analogous to our hippocampus, plays a crucial role in learning and memory. Studies have shown that octopuses with damaged vertical lobes can still navigate through their environment, but struggle to retain new information. Intact, this structure allows them to learn from a single experience, adapting their behavior based on success or failure with remarkable flexibility. Perhaps most fascinating is the octopus's ability to recognize individual humans, even when those humans wear identical uniforms. In laboratories around the world, researchers tell stories of octopuses who selectively spray water at particular people who've annoyed them in the past or extend a friendly arm toward those who've treated them well. Recognition that suggests a mental sophistication we're only beginning to understand. This neural architecture, distributed yet integrated, flexible yet powerful, represents a fundamentally different solution to the problem of intelligence than our own vertebrate model. It's as if nature ran two separate experiments in evolving minds capable of complex cognition, and the octopus represents the road not taken in our own evolutionary history. What makes this parallel evolution of intelligence all the more remarkable is that our last common ancestor with octopuses was a flat, worm-like creature that lived over 750 million years ago. a simple organism with nothing approaching a complex brain. From this humble beginning, octopuses developed their extraordinary cognitive abilities entirely independently from the vertebrate lineage that would eventually produce human intelligence. In the octopus, we glimpse what intelligence might look like if it evolved without the constraints of a backbone, fluid, distributed, and profoundly adaptable. They are, in essence, the closest thing to alien intelligence we can study without leaving Earth. Imagine watching as a common octopus approaches what appears to be an impenetrable glass jar. Inside lies a tasty crab, sealed away behind a twist-top lid. For most creatures, this would be the end of the story. An insurmountable barrier between hunger and satisfaction, but not for the octopus. With methodical precision, the eight-armed wonder wraps its limbs around the jar, feeling for weaknesses, testing the lid's resistance. There's a moment of stillness, almost contemplation, before the octopus begins to twist. One rotation, then another. The lid loosens. Within moments, the barrier falls away and dinner is served. This isn't science fiction, it's a scene witnessed countless times in laboratories and aquariums worldwide. When faced with the jar test, octopuses don't just succeed, they often solve the puzzle faster on subsequent attempts, demonstrating not just problem-solving ability, but the capacity to learn from experience. But their ingenuity extends far beyond manufactured challenges. In the wild, researchers have documented octopuses collecting coconut shell halves, artifacts of human disposal, and carrying these unwieldy objects across the seafloor. When danger approaches, the octopus will quickly assemble these shells into a protective shelter, creating a portable armor system that can be deployed at a moment's notice. What makes this behavior so remarkable isn't just the use of tools, it's the foresight involved. These coconut-carrying octopuses endure the energetic cost and increased predation risk of moving awkwardly across open ocean floors, all for the potential future benefit of protection. They're planning ahead, weighing current disadvantages against future rewards, a cognitive calculation once thought exclusive to mammals and birds. In laboratory settings, the evidence continues to mount. Octopuses navigate complex mazes with surprising efficiency, often remembering solutions for weeks afterward. When researchers place food in clear, complex puzzle boxes, octopuses methodically work through multiple steps to reach their reward, sometimes discovering innovative solutions that researchers hadn't anticipated. One particularly clever octopus in New Zealand was observed disabling an aquarium's overhead spotlight that bothered it by repeatedly squirting water at the bulb until short-circuiting the electrical system. The staff, bewildered by the mysterious equipment failures, only discovered the culprit after setting up overnight cameras. The octopus's problem-solving abilities would be impressive enough as isolated incidents, but what elevates them to extraordinary is their capacity for both short and long-term memory, cognitive abilities that shape their daily existence. Consider the octopus's navigation skills. These creatures create mental maps of their surroundings, remembering complex pathways between their den and multiple hunting grounds, sometimes separated by hundreds of meters of ocean terrain. They establish efficient routes, memorize landmarks, and can recall these mental maps even after extended periods away. In controlled studies, octopuses demonstrate remarkable memory retention. When trained to distinguish between different shapes or patterns, say a square versus a triangle, they not only learn the distinction quickly, but remember it weeks later, despite having lifespans measured in mere years. This memory operates despite the octopus lacking brain structures analogous to our hippocampus, the seat of human memory formation. Perhaps most fascinating is their observational learning. In one remarkable experiment, an octopus was allowed to watch another octopus being rewarded for selecting a specific colored ball. When later presented with the same choice, the observing octopus preferentially selected the rewarded color, despite never having been directly rewarded itself. They were learning vicariously through observation alone. Beyond their practical intelligence lies something perhaps even more profound. Octopuses appear to experience curiosity and engage in play, behaviors once considered hallmarks of advanced mammalian intelligence. Aquarium staff worldwide report octopuses interacting with enrichment toys with what can only be described as joyful exploration. They push balls around their tanks, manipulate floating objects, and sometimes appear to create games of their own design. One octopus in Germany was documented repeatedly releasing a toy boat at one end of its tank, then riding the resulting current to the opposite side, only to bring the boat back and repeat the process dozens of times. They show distinct preferences for different toys and activities. Some enjoy the tactile stimulation of manipulating Lego blocks or unscrewing bottle caps, while others prefer more dynamic play like squirting jets of water at moving objects. More remarkably, octopuses recognize and react differently to individual humans. They may welcome certain caretakers with enthusiastic color displays while dousing others with well-aimed water jets. Some even initiate what appears to be social play with trusted humans, reaching out tentacles in gentle games of tug-of-war or passing objects back and forth. This raises profound questions. Is this behavior genuine play, activity undertaken for enjoyment rather than survival, or merely the expression of boredom in captivity? The evidence increasingly suggests the former, as wild octopuses have also been observed engaging in seemingly playful manipulation of objects with no obvious survival benefit. When we place octopus cognition alongside that of celebrated animal intellects, dolphins, corvids, great apes, the comparison becomes even more striking. An octopus doesn't have the social complexity that drives dolphin intelligence or the cultural transmission that shapes corvid problem-solving. It doesn't benefit from the million-year lineage of primate cognition that informs human thought. The octopus stands evolutionarily alone, having developed its remarkable intelligence through an entirely separate path from vertebrates, our last common ancestor being a flatworm-like creature over 500 million years ago. This presents a profound scientific puzzle. Faced with similar environmental challenges, the need to find food, avoid predators, secure territory, the octopus brain evolved solutions startlingly similar to our own, despite using radically different architecture. Their intelligence represents a case of convergent evolution, where different starting points lead to similar cognitive outcomes. Yet, comparing intelligence across species lines remains fraught with complexity. The octopus excels in certain cognitive domains, spatial memory, tactile learning, camouflage control, where they might outperform even humans. In other areas, like social cognition or abstract reasoning, they may not match the capabilities of social mammals. Perhaps the most illuminating question isn't, are they smarter than us? But rather, what can the unique form of octopus intelligence teach us about the very nature of mind itself? Their alien cognition, evolved independently from our own, offers a profound opportunity, a second data point in our understanding of how intelligence emerges in our universe. As we continue to unravel the mysteries of the octopus mind, we're forced to expand our definition of intelligence beyond human-centric measures, recognizing that nature has found multiple paths to cognitive complexity, each with its own remarkable adaptations and capabilities. The annals of marine biology are filled with tales that sound more like prison break movies than scientific observations. Across the world's aquariums, octopuses have earned a reputation that would make Harry Houdini himself envious. Consider Otto, a six-limbed escape artist from Germany's Sea Star Aquarium. Not content with his underwater home, Otto took to short-circuiting the overhead lights by climbing up the side of his tank and squirting water at them, plunging the entire building into darkness. Why? Perhaps boredom, perhaps brilliance, but his keepers were left scrambling each time the lights mysteriously failed. Then there's Inky, perhaps the most famous octopus escape artist of all time. In 2016, this New Zealand National Aquarium resident squeezed his basketball-sized body through a gap the width of a pencil, slithered across the floor, and disappeared down a drain pipe that led directly to the ocean. His keepers arrived the next morning to find nothing but a trail of seawater marking his path to freedom. Inky had not only recognized an opportunity, but had calculated a route back to the open sea. A journey spanning over 150 feet of unfamiliar territory. But aquariums aren't the only targets of octopus infiltration. Fishing vessels regularly report finding octopuses in sealed bait boxes, having somehow manipulated latches and mechanisms with their flexible arms. One fisherman in Florida described watching in disbelief as an octopus he'd caught methodically tested every corner of its holding tank before finding and exploiting the one weak point in the lid. What makes these escapes remarkable isn't just their frequency, but their deliberation. These aren't random acts of animal instinct, but sequences of actions that suggest planning, spatial awareness, and problem-solving. An octopus doesn't simply react to its environment, it studies it, memorizes it, and then systematically tests it for weaknesses. What tools does an octopus possess that make it such a formidable escape artist? The answer begins with its remarkable anatomy. Unlike humans, confined by rigid skeletons and fixed body shapes, an octopus is essentially a fluid intelligence. With no bones whatsoever, an adult octopus can compress its entire body to fit through any opening large enough to accommodate its beak, the only inflexible part of its anatomy. This beak, roughly the size of a cherry pit in medium-sized species, becomes the limiting factor. If the beak fits, the entire octopus follows, allowing an animal the size of a house cat to pour itself through a hole the diameter of a quarter. This extraordinary flexibility isn't just physical but neurological. Those arms aren't simply following orders from the brain, they're thinking independently. With 2/3 of an octopus's neurons distributed throughout its limbs, each arm can solve problems and manipulate objects even when separated from central control. Imagine having 8 partially autonomous appendages, each capable of feeling, tasting, and problem-solving on its own initiative. When physical flexibility isn't enough, octopuses deploy their infamous ink clouds, not merely as smokescreens, but as sophisticated sensory weapons. The ink contains compounds that deaden the sense of smell, creating not just visual, but olfactory confusion. Some species can even shape these clouds to create decoys, forming ink doubles that hold their shape underwater while the actual octopus slips away unnoticed. Perhaps most unsettling to aquarium designers is the octopus's ability to learn by observation. There are documented cases of octopuses watching their keepers secure latches, only to replicate the precise sequence of movements hours later when no one is watching. They don't just recognize barriers, they analyze the mechanisms that create them. What drives an octopus to escape? Is it merely instinct or something more complex? The simplest explanation might be stress. Captivity creates unnatural conditions for these highly sensitive creatures. Constant light, restricted space, and human presence all represent potential threats to an animal evolved for the dynamic complexity of coral reefs and rocky sea floors. An escape might simply be a natural response to perceived danger, not unlike how we might instinctively seek exits when feeling trapped. Yet this explanation falls short when we observe the methodical nature of octopus escapes. Many occur not during moments of apparent stress but during quiet, nighttime hours, suggesting not panic but calculation. The octopus that waits until darkness, that tests multiple potential exit points, that creates diversions. This animal isn't simply reacting, it's planning. Some marine biologists suggest these escapes represent a form of environmental enrichment, intellectual challenges that octopuses create for themselves in captive settings that lack the cognitive stimulation of the wild. In their natural habitat, octopuses spend hours foraging, hunting, avoiding predators, and navigating complex underwater terrains. The relative simplicity of even the most well-designed aquarium habitat might drive an intelligent animal to create its own challenges. This perspective suggests something profound about octopus cognition, that these animals might not just solve problems out of necessity, but might actively seek intellectual engagement. The octopus that breaks out explores the aquarium floor and returns to its tank before morning, a surprisingly common occurrence, might be less a prisoner attempting escape than a curious mind seeking stimulation. What makes this behavior especially remarkable is its context. Unlike social animals that learn from generations of cultural knowledge, octopuses are largely solitary creatures with short lifespans. Each octopus essentially reinvents the wheel, developing sophisticated problem-solving strategies not through teaching or observation of peers, but through individual experimentation with the world. Each escape represents not cultural learning, but a unique mind engaging with unique challenges. And somewhere in the deep waters off New Zealand's coast, Inky the octopus might still be exploring his vastly expanded world, having pulled off what might be the most spectacular cephalopod prison break in recorded history. Imagine diving in the cool waters of Australia's Jervis Bay. The seafloor appears typical at first, sandy patches interspersed with rocky outcrops, but then something unusual catches your eye, a structure that seems too organized to be natural. Welcome to Octlantis, one of the most extraordinary discoveries in modern marine biology. For generations, we believed octopuses were solitary creatures, lone hunters roaming the ocean depths. This belief was so entrenched that scientists initially doubted what they were seeing when they first encountered these underwater settlements in 2009. Professor David Scheel of Alaska Pacific University described his first reaction as pure disbelief. What they had stumbled upon would eventually force us to rewrite our understanding of octopus behavior. Octopolis was the first site discovered, followed years later by Octlantis in the same bay. These aren't just random gatherings. They're structured communities with distinct features that suggest intentional design. Imagine a small town made of shells, with the central square consisting of a midden, essentially a communal garbage dump of discarded shells from meals past. This midden forms the foundation of the settlement, providing both stability and building materials. Around this central area, the octopuses have excavated dens, small caves and burrows that serve as individual homes. What's fascinating is the density. Up to 15 octopuses have been observed living in an area barely the size of a tennis court. For creatures once thought to avoid their own kind except for mating, this proximity is revolutionary. The structures aren't haphazard. Researchers have noted patterns in the placement of dens with what appear to be preferred neighborhoods and strategic defensive positions. Some octopuses even use human debris, bottles, cans and other junk to reinforce their homes, showing remarkable adaptability and problem-solving. Time-lapse photography has revealed something even more surprising: octopuses actively maintaining these settlements. They clear debris, rearrange shells and even seem to landscape the terrain around their dens. One particularly enterprising octopus was observed spending hours moving small rocks to create a barrier around its den entrance, a behavior that looks remarkably like primitive architecture. Most fascinating of all is that these sites persist through generations. Given that most octopus species live only 1-2 years, Octlantis and Octopolis have housed many generations of 8-armed residents. This suggests something profound. These aren't just temporary gatherings, but enduring communities, potentially with knowledge passed from one generation to the next. As marine biologist Stephanie Chancellor put it, we're not just seeing a group of animals that happen to live near each other, we're seeing the emergence of cultural structures that transcend individual lifespans. The implications are staggering. Could octopuses be developing something akin to cultural transmission, despite their short lives? The discovery of octopus settlements challenged everything we thought we knew about their social lives. For decades, scientific textbooks described octopuses as the loners of the sea, creatures that came together only to mate, and even then reluctantly. But the continuous observation of Octlantis and Octopolis has revealed a complex social tapestry that no one suspected existed. Imagine watching as two octopuses meet at the boundary between their territories. They don't simply flee or fight, they communicate. Their skin flashes with patterns of dark and light. Their bodies shift through postures that seem almost ritualistic. It's like watching a sophisticated diplomatic exchange in a language we're only beginning to decipher. Dr. Julian Finn of Museums Victoria describes one particularly striking interaction. We observed two medium-sized males approach each other cautiously. Instead of immediately displaying aggression, they both turned a pale blue color and extended two arms toward each other. They touched briefly, then retreated to their respective dens. The next day, we saw them hunting in adjacent areas without conflict. These interactions aren't always peaceful. Territorial disputes erupt frequently, especially during mating season. Males will sometimes engage in dramatic displays of strength, puffing themselves up to appear larger, darkening their skin to intimidating shades of red and black. But what's remarkable is that these conflicts rarely escalate to serious injury. Instead, there seems to be a complex system of signals that allows conflicts to be resolved without the need for damaging physical combat. Even more intriguing are the apparent alliances that form. Researchers have documented cases where two smaller octopuses seem to coordinate their movements to protect themselves from a larger aggressor. In one memorable case, two octopuses were observed taking turns standing guard while the other foraged. Behavior that suggests a level of cooperation previously thought impossible among these animals. Mating rituals within these communities are particularly fascinating. Males have been observed courting females for days, not just with the expected displays of colour and movement, but also with what appears to be gift-giving, presenting particularly choice shells or even food items to potential mates. Females, for their part, are selective, sometimes accepting the advances of smaller males while rejecting larger ones, suggesting criteria for mate selection that go beyond simple dominance. Perhaps most poignantly, researchers have observed what appears to be mourning behaviour. When an octopus dies within the community, others have been seen visiting the body, touching it with their arms in what looks remarkably like a farewell gesture. While we must be careful not to anthropomorphize, these observations suggest emotional lives far richer than we ever suspected. The social hierarchies within these communities aren't rigid or simple. Unlike wolf packs or lion prides with clear dominant structures, octopus communities seem to operate with a fluid hierarchy that shifts based on context. An octopus that dominates in one situation may differ in another, creating a social dynamic more akin to a human village than a typical animal group. What has driven these notorious loners to form communities? The answer appears to lie in a complex interplay of environmental factors that have made sociality advantageous despite its challenges. At both Octlantis and Octopolis, researchers have identified an unusual confluence of conditions. The areas feature abundant food resources. These waters teem with crabs, clams, and other octopus delicacies. This food density means competition for meals is reduced, removing one of the primary drivers of solitary behavior. Simultaneously, there's a scarcity of natural shelter. The seafloor in these regions offers few of the caves and crevices that octopuses typically prefer for their dens. Dr. Stephanie Chancellor explains, "It's a trade-off. These areas offer fantastic hunting grounds but poor natural shelter. By coming together and collectively creating shelter from shells and debris, the octopuses have engineered a solution to this problem." This explanation makes evolutionary sense, but it raises a puzzling question. If these conditions are advantageous, why haven't we observed octopus settlements more widely? The answer may lie in the delicate balance of factors required. Too little food and competition drives them apart. Too many natural shelters, and there's no need to build communities. It's only in these Goldilocks zones that octopus cities emerge. Climate change is now altering this equation in ways we're just beginning to understand. Rising ocean temperatures have been observed to increase octopus metabolism, requiring more food intake. Simultaneously, ocean acidification is affecting the availability of the calcium carbonate that marine animals need to build shells, potentially reducing both food sources and building materials for octopus settlements. More dramatically, extreme weather events like cyclones and marine heat waves can destroy these carefully constructed communities overnight. After a particularly severe storm in 2017, Octlantis was nearly obliterated. Researchers were astonished to find that within weeks, surviving octopuses had begun rebuilding, suggesting a remarkable resilience and commitment to the settlement model. Human activity presents another significant impact. Fishing practices, particularly bottom trawling, can devastate the seafloor and destroy octopus settlements. Pollution, especially plastic waste, introduces new materials into their environment, materials that octopuses readily incorporate into their structures. Researchers have found dens reinforced with everything from plastic bottles to discarded fishing gear. Ironically, some human impacts may actually favour the development of octopus cities. As overfishing removes predatory fish from marine ecosystems, octopus populations have boomed in some areas. Simultaneously, human structures like jetties and artificial reefs create new substrate that can serve as the foundation for octopus settlements. The story of octopus cities is thus not simply about amazing animal behavior. It's about adaptation in the face of changing environments, both natural and human-caused. These eight-armed urban planners demonstrate nature's remarkable capacity for innovation when traditional ways of life are challenged by new conditions. As marine biologist Peter Godfrey Smith notes, what we're witnessing may be an evolutionary experiment in progress, a new way of being an octopus that's emerging before our eyes. Whether this experiment represents the future of octopus life, or a fascinating but temporary adaptation, remains one of the most intriguing questions in marine biology today. Imagine yourself drifting silently through the azure depths of the ocean. A common octopus appears before you, its skin a mottled beige that matches the sandy seafloor. In the span of a heartbeat, the creature transforms. Ripples of dark pigment race across its body, followed by an explosion of bright red that pulses from head to arms. Moments later, the skin erupts in bumpy protrusions, giving the once smooth animal the appearance of covered coral. This isn't just an impressive display, it's language. The octopus communicates in ways so alien to our own experience that we're only beginning to decipher their meaning. Unlike humans who rely primarily on sound and sight, octopuses have evolved a communication system that turns their entire body into a canvas of expression. Their skin contains specialized cells called chromatophores, tiny, pigment-filled sacs controlled by muscles that can contract or relax with astonishing precision. By manipulating these chromatophores, an octopus can produce over 30 distinct patterns, each potentially carrying specific meaning. When two octopuses encounter each other in the wild, they engage in what scientists call a skin conversation. A male might approach a female with a striped pattern rippling down one side of his body, while maintaining a plain appearance on the side facing away from her, a targeted message meant only for her reception. If unwelcome, she might respond with a blanching effect, draining colour from her skin in a wave-like motion that signals rejection as clearly as any spoken word. But colour is just the beginning of their communicative repertoire. Octopuses can manipulate the texture of their skin with remarkable precision, raising papillae to create ridges, bumps and spikes. These postural displays serve multiple functions. They can mimic surrounding flora and fauna for camouflage, signal aggression by making the octopus appear larger, or communicate submission by creating a smooth, flattened appearance. Perhaps most fascinating is the contextual nature of these signals. The same colour pattern might mean something entirely different depending on the situation. A dark red coloration could signal either mating readiness or aggressive territoriality based on subtle differences in intensity, duration and accompanying postural changes. This suggests a complexity to octopus communication that rivals the nuanced body language of mammals. In laboratory settings, researchers have documented octopuses using targeted signals when interacting with specific individuals. One particularly bold giant Pacific octopus at the Seattle Aquarium would consistently turn a distinctive shade of burgundy whenever a certain keeper approached her tank, a pattern she never displayed for other staff members. Such observations hint at personalized communication, challenging our understanding of invertebrate cognition. The depth of their signaling ability becomes even more remarkable when we consider that octopuses are colorblind. How can they produce such intricate color displays they themselves cannot see? The answer may lie in their ability to detect polarized light through their skin, essentially feeling the patterns they create rather than seeing them as we would. As we continue to study these enigmatic creatures, each discovery reveals new layers to their communicative abilities. The silent language of the octopus, written in color, texture and movement, may contain complexities we have yet to imagine, a dictionary of expression evolved in parallel to our own, yet fundamentally different in its execution and perception. In the waters off New Zealand's coast, marine biologists made a discovery that sent ripples through the scientific community. They observed a group of octopuses engaging in a peculiar hunting behavior, collecting coconut shells, manipulating them into protective shelters, and carrying these makeshift homes across the sea floor. Most remarkably, this behavior wasn't universal among the species, but concentrated in specific geographical areas. Could this be evidence of octopus culture? Culture, traditionally defined as behaviors transmitted through social learning rather than genetics, has long been considered the exclusive domain of mammals and birds. Yet the localized nature of these sophisticated tool-using behaviors challenges that assumption. Young octopuses in these regions appear to learn by watching their older counterparts, adopting techniques that aren't innate but acquired. Consider the case of the stilt-walking behavior documented in Indonesian waters. Here, octopuses have been observed carrying coconut shells while walking on the tips of their arms across exposed seafloors. A vulnerable position that would make little evolutionary sense unless the payoff was significant. The behavior requires not just intelligence but foresight, the ability to accept temporary risk for future reward, a cognitive feat we once thought beyond invertebrate capability. What makes these potential instances of cultural transmission even more remarkable is the solitary nature of most octopus species. Unlike dolphins or primates, who have ample opportunity to learn from group members, octopuses typically encounter others of their kind only during brief mating encounters. How then could cultural knowledge persist and spread? The answer may lie in what researchers call observational windows, brief periods when juvenile octopuses, not yet fully committed to solitary life, observe the techniques of mature individuals from a safe distance. These fleeting opportunities for learning might be sufficient for the transmission of particularly valuable behaviors. In laboratory settings, evidence for social learning becomes even more compelling. When octopuses housed in adjacent tanks can observe each other, they often solve novel problems faster than isolated individuals. In one striking experiment, octopuses who watched companions open a screw-top jar containing food were able to replicate the technique immediately when presented with the same challenge, while those without observational experience struggled for significantly longer. Critics argue these behaviors may still be instinctual, genetic programs activated by environmental triggers rather than learned techniques. Yet the regional specificity of these behaviors and their absence in genetically similar populations living in different areas suggests something more complex at work. If octopuses indeed possess cultural learning, it represents a fascinating case of convergent evolution, the independent development of similar traits in unrelated lineages. Our last common ancestor with octopuses lived over 500 million years ago, meaning their intelligence and potential cultural capabilities evolved entirely separately from our own. This possibility forces us to reconsider fundamental assumptions about intelligence and cultural transmission. Perhaps culture isn't a uniquely vertebrate achievement, but a solution that intelligence gravitates towards, regardless of neural architecture or evolutionary history, a testament to the power of social learning as an adaptive strategy. Deep in the waters of Jervis Bay, Australia, lies a phenomenon that has challenged everything we thought we knew about octopus behavior. Dubbed Octlantis by the scientific team that discovered it, this underwater settlement houses a community of Sydney octopuses that appear to live in close proximity, interact regularly, and even cooperate in ways previously thought impossible for these supposedly solitary creatures. This discovery gives new meaning to what we've playfully termed the Octopus Syndicate, a metaphorical organization of cephalopods whose collective behaviors hint at something more organized than random individual actions. Traditional wisdom held that octopuses were fundamentally solitary, interacting with others of their kind only to mate and occasionally to fight. Yet Octlantis and its predecessor Octopolis tell a different story. Here, up to 15 octopuses have been observed sharing a relatively small area, building dens from accumulated shells and other materials, defending territory and communicating through elaborate color displays directed at specific individuals. The question that captivates researchers is whether these aggregations represent something akin to the collective intelligence seen in social insects or mammalian groups. Are we witnessing the cephalopod equivalent of ant colonies or meerkat clans? The evidence is both compelling and confounding. Unlike ants or bees, whose colonial behaviors are largely instinctual and genetically programmed, octopus interactions appear more complex and situational. They don't have the rigid caste systems or fixed behavioral patterns of insects. Yet they also lack the clear family structures and long-term social bonds of mammals like meerkats or wolves. What emerges instead is something uniquely octopod, a loose association of individuals who tolerate proximity when conditions favor it, communicate and occasionally cooperate, yet maintain their fundamental independence. In Octlantis, researchers have documented what appears to be coordinated hunting, with octopuses flushing prey from hiding places toward waiting companions. They've observed shared vigilance, where multiple individuals react simultaneously to potential threats. Most intriguingly, they've recorded instances of what might be described as conflict resolution, where disputes over territory are settled through display rather than damaging physical confrontation. These behaviors suggest what scientists call emergent properties, collective capabilities that arise from individual interactions without centralized control. It's not that the octopuses are following a leader or adhering to established social rules. Rather, their individual intelligent responses to one another create patterns that resemble organized social structures. The implications are profound. If octopuses, with their short lifespans, solitary tendencies and evolutionary distance from humans, can develop even rudimentary collective behaviors, it suggests social intelligence may be an inevitable outcome of sufficient cognitive complexity, regardless of ancestral history or neural architecture. Moreover, these octopus settlements offer a window into how social structures might initially evolve. Unlike the highly developed societies of primates or social insects, Octlantis may represent something akin to the earlier stages of social living, intelligent individuals beginning to harness the advantages of tolerated proximity and occasional cooperation. What we're witnessing in these underwater cities may be a parallel evolutionary experiment in sociality. A road not taken in our own lineage, but one that could reveal universal principles about how individual intelligence scales into collective capabilities. The Octopus Syndicate, far from being merely a fanciful metaphor, might represent a fundamental blueprint for intelligence organizing itself into something greater than the sum of its parts. The glass wall of the tank separates two intelligent species, each studying the other with equal fascination. For decades, scientists have placed octopuses in laboratory settings to unravel their mysteries, but at what cost? When we bring these ocean wanderers into captivity, we fundamentally alter their lives. In the wild, octopuses roam territories spanning hundreds of square meters, hunting across coral reefs and sandy bottoms. In captivity, even the most well-designed tanks confine them to a tiny fraction of this space. This dramatic reduction in freedom creates stress that manifests in behaviors rarely seen in nature: excessive grooming, self-mutilation, and dramatically shortened lifespans. Consider Otto, an octopus at a German aquarium who became famous for repeatedly short-circuiting the lights above his tank by squirting water at them. Was this mischief, boredom, or distress? The line between enrichment and torment becomes blurry when dealing with creatures whose needs we're still struggling to understand. Researchers face a profound ethical conundrum. The very act of studying these animals changes their behavior, potentially invalidating our findings. Yet field studies present their own challenges. Wild octopuses are masters of camouflage and evasion. They slip between rocks, disappear into crevices, and transform themselves to match their surroundings. Following an octopus through its daily life requires patience, specialized equipment, and no small measure of luck. Even when we succeed in observing them naturally, we face questions about intervention. If an octopus is injured by a predator during observation, should researchers step in? If human fishing practices are destroying octopus habitats, do scientists have an obligation to become advocates? The line between objective study and ethical responsibility grows increasingly complex as we recognize the cognitive sophistication of these remarkable invertebrates. Some forward-thinking researchers are developing alternative approaches: larger, more complex enclosures with rotating enrichment activities, observational studies using remote cameras, and even halfway house setups where octopuses can be studied in semi-natural environments. These methods represent our growing understanding that to truly know the octopus, We must respect its nature rather than bend it to our scientific convenience. From the terrifying sea monster legends of antiquity to the heartwarming protagonists of today's nature documentaries, our cultural relationship with the octopus has undergone a remarkable transformation. The 2020 documentary My Octopus Teacher captivated millions by chronicling filmmaker Craig Foster's relationship with a wild common octopus in the kelp forests of South Africa. For many viewers, this was a watershed moment, the first time they considered an invertebrate as an individual with personality, intelligence, and emotional depth. The film won an Academy Award not just for its stunning underwater photography, but for its emotional impact, as audiences around the world found themselves mourning an octopus as they might a beloved character in a drama. This shift in perception continues in scientific programming. In PBS's Octopus Making Contact, we follow Dr. David Scheel as he raises a day octopus in his home, documenting her problem-solving abilities and the apparent bond that forms between them. What makes these shows resonate isn't just the spectacle of octopus abilities, but the narrative of connection across the vast evolutionary gulf separating our species. In fiction, octopuses have evolved from mindless monsters to complex characters. The alien heptapods in Arrival draw clear inspiration from octopus communication and perception, suggesting that truly alien intelligence might look less like little green men and more like the cephalopods already sharing our planet. Children's literature has embraced octopuses as metaphors for feeling different or having hidden talents, with books featuring octopus protagonists who use their many arms to help others or overcome challenges. Even in symbolism, octopuses have undergone rehabilitation. Once representing entrapping evil or chaotic destruction, they now commonly symbolize flexibility, creativity, and intelligence. Corporate logos, art installations, and even tattoos celebrate the octopus as an emblem of adaptation and resilience, qualities increasingly valued in our rapidly changing world. This cultural shift raises important questions about how representation impacts conservation. Does emotional connection through media translate to practical action? The evidence suggests it might. Interest in octopus protection has grown alongside their positive cultural prominence, with more people opposing practices like octopus farming and supporting marine protected areas where these animals thrive. Beneath the waves, a silent crisis threatens octopus populations worldwide, caught in the crosshairs of multiple human impacts. Commercial fishing targets these intelligent creatures directly, with global octopus catches exceeding 350,000 tons annually. The rise of specialized fishing gear, clay pots, plastic traps, and jigging machines has made octopus harvesting more efficient, just as demand increases in global markets. But direct fishing tells only part of the story. Bottom trawling, a destructive fishing method that scrapes the sea floor, demolishes the rocky hideouts and coral formations that octopuses depend on for shelter and breeding. Imagine losing not just your home, but every potential home in your neighborhood. This is the reality for octopuses in trawled areas. Pollution presents another insidious threat. Octopuses breathe by drawing water over their gills, which means they constantly filter whatever contaminants we've added to their environment. Plastic particles, industrial chemicals, and agricultural runoff all accumulate in their tissues. Their remarkable sensitivity, the same that enables their intelligence, makes them particularly vulnerable to toxins that disrupt nervous system function. Climate change compounds these pressures. Rising ocean temperatures reduce oxygen levels in seawater, forcing octopuses to expend more energy breathing. Ocean acidification threatens the shellfish many octopuses prey upon. More frequent storms destroy habitats and disrupt breeding cycles. These stressors don't exist in isolation. They amplify each other, creating challenges that even the adaptable octopus struggles to overcome. The ecological consequences of declining octopus populations ripple throughout marine ecosystems. As mid-level predators, octopuses control populations of crustaceans and small fish, preventing any single species from dominating. Their discarded dens provide shelter for other marine creatures. Even their hunting behaviors aerate sediment and move nutrients through the system. Remove octopuses and you unravel connections throughout the underwater web of life. Conservation efforts are emerging, though they face unique challenges. Unlike charismatic mammals, octopuses don't inspire immediate public concern. Their short natural lifespans, typically 1–2 years, mean population dynamics can shift rapidly. And their solitary nature makes them harder to monitor than animals that gather in groups. Some promising approaches include marine protected areas where fishing is prohibited, allowing octopuses to breed undisturbed. Sustainable harvesting guidelines aim to prevent capturing breeding females or immature individuals, and innovative research uses environmental DNA, genetic material shed into the water, to monitor octopus populations without disturbing them directly. For these efforts to succeed, we must reconcile a paradox. The same qualities that make octopuses fascinating research subjects and delicacies on dinner plates also make them deserving of protection. In choosing their future, we reveal something fundamental about how we value intelligence different from our own. For centuries, we've placed ourselves on a pedestal. Human intelligence has been our measuring stick, our gold standard against which all other minds are judged. But what if we've been asking the wrong questions all along? Imagine for a moment that you have no bones, that your body can morph and flow like liquid through the smallest of spaces. Imagine having 8 limbs, each with its own nervous system, capable of solving problems even when disconnected from your central brain. Imagine your skin can instantaneously change not just color but texture to become virtually invisible against any background. This is the reality of the octopus, and it demands we reconsider everything we thought we knew about intelligence. The traditional view of intelligence has been deeply anthropocentric. We've privileged abilities like abstract reasoning, language, and tool use because these are the hallmarks of our own cognitive evolution. But the octopus presents us with a fundamentally different type of mind, one that evolved along a separate evolutionary path for over 500 million years. What makes this so remarkable is that the octopus brain evolved completely independently from our own. Our last common ancestor with octopuses was a flatworm-like creature with a simple nervous system that lived over 500 million years ago. Yet somehow, through entirely different evolutionary pressures and pathways, the octopus developed a complex brain and sophisticated cognitive abilities that in many ways parallel our own. This convergent evolution suggests something profound. Intelligence isn't a ladder with humans at the top, but rather a vast branching tree with multiple forms of intelligence blooming at its various ends. Perhaps most fascinating is the octopus's embodied cognition, the way its intelligence is distributed throughout its entire body. Unlike humans, whose cognitive processing is heavily centralized in the brain, an octopus has 2/3 of its neurons spread throughout its arms. Each arm can act semi-autonomously, solving tactile problems and manipulating objects even when the central brain isn't directly involved. This decentralized intelligence forces us to expand our definition of what a mind can be. The octopus doesn't just have a brain, its entire body is, in many ways, a thinking organ. When an octopus reaches into a narrow crevice to extract a crab, each sucker on its arm is making thousands of minute sensory discriminations and adjustments without needing constant input from the central brain. What if, instead of measuring intelligence by how similar other minds are to ours, we began to appreciate intelligence by how well it serves an organism in its unique ecological niche? By this measure, the octopus may be one of the most intelligently adapted creatures on our planet. Here's where the octopus story takes an unexpected turn. If you were designing an animal to evolve high intelligence, the octopus would break all your rules. Most theories about the evolution of intelligence focus on traits like longevity, parental care, and social living. We humans live for decades, invest years in raising our young, and form complex societies where knowledge can be shared across generations. These factors create both the opportunity and the pressure for intelligence to evolve. The octopus, by contrast, is the evolutionary rebel, who shouldn't be smart, but somehow is anyway. Most octopuses live just 1 to 2 years, barely enough time, we might think, to accumulate the experiences that nurture intelligence. They're largely solitary creatures, with none of the social structures that we believe drove the evolution of intelligence in apes, dolphins, and elephants. Perhaps most puzzling of all, Octopuses are semmelporous. They reproduce just once and then die, with females often spending their final days guarding their eggs without feeding until they waste away. This creates an evolutionary conundrum. Why invest in building such a complex brain for such a short, solitary life? One compelling theory centers on the octopus's unique ecological challenges. Unlike most mollusks, octopuses abandoned their protective shells millions of years ago, trading armor for agility. This left them vulnerable to a host of predators, from sharks to moray eels. Without a shell's protection, they needed to become masters of evasion, camouflage and problem-solving just to survive from one day to the next. Their prey selection may also have driven cognitive evolution. Octopuses are fond of crustaceans, like crabs and lobsters, prey that come with their own natural armor and require creative solutions to access. Each meal becomes a puzzle to solve, a lock to pick, a problem that rewards innovation. The paradox deepens when we consider their cousins, the squid and cuttlefish. These cephalopods share many of the octopus's cognitive gifts, but tend to be more social. The Hawaiian bobtail squid forms symbiotic relationships with bioluminescent bacteria, effectively using them as a cloaking device, a biological technology that requires sophisticated internal regulation. This family of cephalopods seems to have found a different path to intelligence, one that defies our expectations and theories about how complex cognition evolves. They remind us that evolution isn't following a predetermined plan toward producing human-like intelligence, but rather responding to the unique pressures of countless ecological niches, sometimes producing minds of startling complexity through entirely unexpected means. When we look to the stars and imagine what intelligent life might exist beyond our planet, we often picture beings not unlike ourselves, bipedal, tool-using, socially complex. But perhaps the most alien intelligence we'll ever encounter is already here on Earth, stretching its 8 arms through the depths of our oceans. The octopus represents a completely independent experiment in the evolution of complex intelligence, one that followed a different path and arrived at a different form of mind than our own. This makes them invaluable models for how intelligence might evolve on other worlds, under different conditions than those that shaped life on Earth. Consider the fundamental differences. Where our intelligence is housed in a centralized brain protected by a skull, the octopus has a distributed nervous system spread throughout its body. Where we perceive the world primarily through vision and sound, the octopus experiences a world dominated by touch and taste, with each sucker capable of both manipulating objects and chemically tasting them. Astrobiologists have begun looking to octopuses as inspiration for what alien life might be like, particularly on water worlds that may be common throughout our galaxy. The octopus demonstrates that intelligence doesn't require a backbone, a social structure, or even a long lifespan. It can emerge in response to environmental pressures that reward problem-solving and adaptability. Even more compelling is the way octopuses manipulate their surroundings. When we imagine aliens building technology, we tend to think of solid tools and machines. But octopuses represent a different approach. They manipulate their own bodies as living technology. Their skin is essentially a high-resolution display capable of mimicking textures and patterns with unprecedented precision. Their arms function as both sensors and manipulators simultaneously. What if extraterrestrial intelligence developed along similar lines? We might encounter beings whose technology isn't built or manufactured, but grown or manifested through biological processes. Beings who don't build machines because they have evolved to become living machines themselves. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence, SETI, has traditionally focused on detecting radio signals or other technological markers similar to our own. But the octopus suggests we should broaden our search parameters. Intelligent life elsewhere might not build radio telescopes or spacecraft. It might express its intelligence through biological adaptation, manipulation of its environment, or forms of communication we've barely begun to imagine. In studying the octopus, we're not just learning about an earthly creature, we're preparing ourselves for the true diversity of mind that might exist throughout the cosmos. We're training ourselves to recognize intelligence even when it looks nothing like our own, a skill that may prove essential when we finally make contact with life beyond our planet. The octopus reminds us that intelligence isn't a single peak that evolution climbs toward, but rather a vast landscape with many summits, each representing a different but equally valid solution to the challenge of survival. In this view, human intelligence isn't the culmination of evolution but just one experiment among many, a humbling but ultimately liberating perspective as we look to the stars. Imagine waking up tomorrow and suddenly having 8 minds instead of one, not quite 8 separate consciousnesses, but rather a single awareness distributed across 8 semi-independent centers of thought. This isn't science fiction, it's the daily reality of the octopus. For decades we've observed octopuses changing colors during sleep, rippling patterns of pigmentation washing across their skin like dreams made visible. But what does an octopus dream about? The hunt? Escape from predators? Or something we humans can't even conceive? The most profound questions about octopus cognition remain tantalizingly unanswered. When an octopus solves a puzzle, recognizes a familiar human face, or decorates its den with collected treasures, is it experiencing something like human consciousness? Scientists have attempted to apply the famous mirror test, a benchmark for self-awareness where animals recognize their own reflection, to octopuses. But the results remain controversial. Unlike humans or great apes, octopuses don't rely primarily on vision for social interaction. Perhaps an octopus perceives itself not through sight, but through the constant feedback of its arms, each containing nearly as many neurons as its central brain. Consider Otto, a German aquarium octopus who repeatedly short-circuited the lights above his tank by climbing up and spraying them with water when they annoyed him. Was this merely instinctive behavior? Or did Otto possess some understanding of cause and effect, even a rudimentary concept of the future? The most puzzling aspect of octopus intelligence is why it evolved at all. Unlike humans who learn from parents and grandparents across generations, most octopuses live solitary lives and die shortly after reproducing. Their remarkable cognitive abilities seem almost evolutionarily wasteful, unless we're missing something fundamental about their lives in the wild. Perhaps the greatest mystery lies in what we might call their emotional lives. Keepers report octopuses showing preferences for certain humans, excitement at new toys, and what looks remarkably like boredom, curiosity, and even mischief. Do octopuses experience feelings similar to ours, or are we simply projecting human emotions onto patterns of behavior that evolved for entirely different purposes? The answers to these questions could revolutionize our understanding, not just of octopuses, but of consciousness itself. If a creature with such a radically different evolutionary history can develop complex cognition, perhaps consciousness isn't as rare or special in the animal kingdom as we once believed. In laboratories around the world, engineers and roboticists are turning to the octopus for inspiration. After all, why build rigid metal machines when nature has perfected soft, flexible robotics over millions of years of evolution? The octopus arm represents one of the most sophisticated manipulators on Earth, infinitely flexible yet precisely controlled, able to squeeze through the tightest openings, then delicately pick up objects as fragile as a raw egg. Creating artificial versions has proven challenging, but the payoffs could be revolutionary. Medical researchers envision octopus-inspired robots that could snake through the human body, performing surgeries without large incisions. Search and rescue teams dream of soft robots that could squeeze through rubble to locate survivors after disasters. Even space exploration might benefit from shape-shifting robots that adapt to unknown terrains. But it's not just the octopus's physical form that's inspiring innovation. Their camouflage abilities, changing color, pattern, and even skin texture in milliseconds, have led to breakthroughs in adaptive materials. Imagine military vehicles that blend perfectly into their surroundings, or buildings that change color to regulate temperature based on weather conditions. Perhaps most intriguing are the artificial intelligence models inspired by the octopus's distributed nervous system. Unlike traditional AI, which centralizes processing power, these new models distribute intelligence across networks, creating systems that are more flexible, resilient, and potentially more creative than their predecessors. By mimicking the octopus's way of processing information with independent yet coordinated minds, researchers hope to create AI systems capable of handling multiple complex tasks simultaneously, adapting to new situations without explicit programming. Just as the octopus arm knows how to solve problems independently of the central brain, these systems could develop solutions beyond their original programming. The irony isn't lost on scientists. In seeking to build more advanced artificial intelligence, we're turning to a creature that evolved its remarkable mind entirely separately from our own. For all our laboratory observations and aquarium experiments, the truth is we've barely begun to understand how octopuses behave in their natural environment. The ocean's depths remain more mysterious to us than the surface of Mars. Recent technological advances promise to change this fundamentally. Autonomous underwater drones, equipped with high-definition cameras and minimal light sources, can now observe octopuses without disturbing their natural behaviors. These silent witnesses are revealing a world far more complex than we imagined. In the waters off eastern Australia, marine biologists have deployed networks of these drones to monitor Octopus and Octlantis, those mysterious underwater cities where supposedly solitary octopuses gather in surprising numbers. The early findings have upended our understanding of octopus social structures. The drones have documented octopuses communicating through complex color displays, establishing territories, and even cooperating to defend the colony against predators. Most surprisingly, they've recorded what appears to be octopuses teaching hunting techniques to others, a form of cultural transmission previously thought impossible for these short-lived creatures. Genetic studies are beginning to map the social relationships within these colonies. Are the octopuses related? Do family bonds exist in these communities? The DNA sequencing of octopus populations may reveal unexpected kinship patterns that could explain their puzzling social behaviors. Perhaps the most ambitious project involves tracking individual octopuses throughout their entire lives, from their planktonic larval stage to their final days as mature adults. By following the same individuals over time, scientists hope to understand how octopus intelligence develops and whether their remarkable problem-solving abilities are learned or innate. These long-term studies might finally answer the question that has puzzled cephalopod researchers for generations. Why did these mollusks, with no apparent evolutionary pressure for complex cognition, develop minds that rival those of mammals? The answer could fundamentally change our understanding of how intelligence evolves in the natural world. As we peer deeper into the octopus's world, we may discover that the greatest mystery isn't how different they are from us, but how similar. Despite evolving on an entirely separate branch of life's tree, octopuses and humans may have independently arrived at similar solutions to the challenge of understanding and manipulating the world around them. In the constantly shifting boundaries between what we know and what remains mysterious, the octopus continues to ink its signature, challenging our definitions of intelligence, consciousness, and perhaps even our understanding of what it means to be a thinking being in this vast ocean we call home. When we ask if octopuses are smarter than humans, we're really asking something far more profound about the nature of intelligence itself. Our journey through the remarkable world of these eight-armed marvels has shown us that intelligence isn't a simple ladder with humans perched comfortably at the top. Consider this. While you and I might struggle to solve differential equations underwater while changing color to match our surroundings, the octopus accomplishes this feat without a second thought. Their intelligence isn't lesser than ours, it's wonderfully, fascinatingly different. The octopus exists in a sensory realm we can barely comprehend. Their skin doesn't just see, it thinks. Their arms don't just move, they problem-solve independently. When an octopus navigates the complex three-dimensional chess game of coral reef life, it's displaying a form of intelligence perfectly adapted to challenges we will never face. What we're discovering is that intelligence doesn't exist on a single axis. Rather, it's a constellation of abilities, each evolved for specific environments and challenges. The octopus excels in spatial reasoning, tactile learning and adaptive camouflage in ways that make our own abilities in these areas seem primitive by comparison. Yet these cephalopods live brief, often solitary lives. They lack the cumulative cultural knowledge that humans build over generations. They don't write symphonies or launch space telescopes. But is that the only measure of intelligence that matters? Perhaps the most profound lesson the octopus teaches us is humility. For centuries, we've placed ourselves at the center of creation, assuming our form of intelligence is the pinnacle of evolution. The octopus, this alien intelligence that evolved entirely separately from our vertebrate lineage, challenges that comfortable assumption. They remind us that nature has found multiple solutions to the puzzle of creating a thinking being, and each solution is magnificent in its own right. So are octopuses smarter than humans? In some domains, unquestionably yes. In others, decidedly no. But perhaps the question itself reveals more about our own limitations than theirs. Our need to rank and categorize rather than simply to wonder and learn. As we stand at this crossroads of understanding, we must ask ourselves, what kind of relationship do we want to have with these remarkable creatures going forward? For too long, our interaction with octopuses has been primarily extractive. We've harvested them as food, captured them for entertainment, and studied them through the bars of tanks. But now, as we begin to comprehend the depth of their mental lives, this relationship feels increasingly uncomfortable, perhaps even unethical. Imagine for a moment that aliens landed on Earth tomorrow. How would we want them to treat us? Would we accept being studied in small enclosures, our cognitive abilities measured through puzzles we had no cultural context for? Or would we hope for something more reciprocal, more respectful? The future of octopus conservation must be built on this foundation of respect. The establishment of marine protected areas around sites like Octlantis and Octopolis isn't just about preserving biodiversity, it's about protecting communities of thinking beings. When we pollute oceans with plastics and chemicals, we're not just damaging ecosystems, we're destroying the homes of intelligent creatures who experience their environment in ways we're only beginning to understand. This doesn't mean we must end all research. Rather, it means transforming how we conduct it. Field studies using non-invasive technologies like underwater drones and environmental DNA sampling offer us windows into octopus lives without the trauma of captivity. When captive studies are necessary, we have a responsibility to provide environments rich in stimulation and challenge, not sterile tanks that drive these curious minds to frustration and escape attempts. We must also reconsider our ethical frameworks. Currently, most research ethics committees grant special protections to vertebrates like mammals and birds, while invertebrates receive far fewer considerations. Yet the evidence suggests that octopuses experience pain, curiosity, and perhaps even something like consciousness. Our ethical systems must evolve as our understanding does. The octopus challenges us to expand our moral circle, to recognize intelligence even when it appears in forms dramatically different from our own. In learning to coexist respectfully with the Octopus Syndicate, we may be preparing ourselves for even greater challenges of understanding non-human intelligence, whether in other Earth species or perhaps someday beyond our planet. As our exploration of the Octopus Syndicate comes to a close, I invite you to pause and truly contemplate what we've discovered. These creatures, with their 3 hearts, blue blood and distributed brains, represent one of nature's most spectacular experiments in creating intelligence. Consider the evolutionary journey. Somewhere around 500 million years ago, our lineage and the octopus lineage diverged. While our ancestors developed backbones, internal skeletons, and centralized brains, the octopus's ancestors took a radically different path. They shed their shells, developed unparalleled flexibility, and distributed their intelligence throughout their bodies. 2 entirely separate evolutionary paths leading to complex cognition. 2 profound solutions to the challenge of surviving and thriving in complex environments. If this doesn't inspire wonder, what possibly could? The octopus reminds us that nature's creativity far exceeds our imagination. Each time we've said, only humans can do this, whether it's using tools, solving multi-step problems or playing, the octopus has proven us wrong. They force us to continuously redraw the maps of our understanding. There's a certain poetic resonance in how perfectly adapted octopuses are to our changing world. In times of environmental flux, specialists struggle while generalists thrive. And what creature is more adaptable than the octopus? Their very body is a monument to flexibility. Their intelligence is defined by improvisation and creative problem-solving. As humans grapple with our own need to adapt to rapidly changing circumstances, perhaps we have something to learn from these eight-armed masters of reinvention. The octopus teaches us that resilience comes not from rigid strength, but from embracing change. That intelligence isn't just about accumulating knowledge, but about applying it creatively to new situations. That real understanding requires us to step outside our comfortable assumptions. So the next time you look into the sea, remember that you're gazing into a world where intelligence took a different path. Where thinking beings with 3 hearts and 8 arms build cities of shell, solve puzzles no one taught them how to solve, and perhaps in ways we may never fully comprehend, wonder about the strange 2-armed creatures who watch them from above. The Octopus Syndicate isn't just a subject for scientific study. It's a mirror that reflects back our place in a universe far stranger, far more diverse and far more wonderful than we often allow ourselves to imagine. And in that reflection lies perhaps the greatest gift these remarkable creatures offer us, a renewed sense of humility, curiosity, and awe at the boundless creativity of life itself.